welcome to Fatman Beyond. I'm Kevin Smith.
I am Marc Bernard.
Hey!
Holy shit.
Boy, we all sound sad, don't we? But this isn't a night to mourn. This is a night to celebrate and remember, and that's what we're going to do in a minute. Before we dive into that, hold that thought. Just want to thank everybody. If you're watching at home or listening at home, as we are every week, here in the Scum Villainy Cantina on Hollywood Boulevard, put your hands together so the folks at home know you're real. The beautiful thing is this place is sold out because there are a bunch of people wanting to be together on this day for an Irish wake. We've all gathered to honor the sensational Stan Lee this evening, ladies and gentlemen. And we're going to do that. We're going to tell fun fucking stories, our remembrances, and then turn to you guys and see if you guys got any remembrances. So if anybody's ever encountered or met Stan Lee, and I'm sure almost half this room, if not everybody in this room, probably interacted with him at one point or another, took a picture with him, saw him at a con or whatever the fuck. Have those ready. That's what we'll be doing at the end of the night. Instead of Q&A, we're going to just keep talking about Stan. And rather than just it be me and Marc, we're going to turn it over to you guys as well, because we think a lot of people feel what we feel, man. We got to spend a little time with him in this lifetime. I got to spend a lot of time with him in the last 23 years. So I was cataloging. It's weird, I've never done this before, but I started writing down all the moments I can remember that I interacted with them. And I came up with a long fucking list.
Wow.
So I'm going to have a lot of stories to tell, because it's going to read like a fucking journal that Kevin Spacey kept in Seven. Just, not that he keeps in real life. That's a different thing altogether. It's tough making Kevin Spacey movie references anymore, man.
I'm trying to be good, man. I'm trying.
God damn it sucks.
All the boys I've loved before.
So we're going to talk about Stan. We're going to love on Stan tonight. It's weird. This is the first time we've done this show in a Stan Lee-less world. I thought about that this morning when I woke up, put it up on Instagram. This is the first morning of my life that I've woken up in a Stan Lee-less world, and it is a little less fucking colorful. And there's a long tail that wonderful dinosaur left behind that we'll all be riding from now until the end of time, like Fred Flintstone at the 5 o'clock whistle and shit. He'll be here forever. He'll be with us in the movies, from what I understand, for at least 5 more Marvel films.
Yeah, they shot a bunch of cameos in one hit.
In advance. So, and his characters will be with us forever. He's gone, but he's not going anywhere.
No.
He's a legend, and now he's an icon, and he belongs to eternity. But it's fucking weird just to think that, oh shit, that's it. Like, the trail ends here.
Except not really. Like, that's the great part, is that because, like, I wrote this piece for The Hollywood Reporter today, just sort of kind of eulogizing, kind of just explaining to people who aren't quite as familiar with Stan Lee, despite all of the work, what he meant to the industry. And I was doing some research, and it stunned me that he started writing monthly comics in 1961, and he stopped in 1972. And in that time, he created everything. Like, most of the fucking Marvel Universe was done in a decade. Like, and I think that's probably the single greatest creative burst in pop culture history. Like, nobody else has done quite as much that has legs as that 10-year run.
And also, people could point to, of course, the distinguished competition DC's got, but they don't have a Stan. They have many creators under one roof, but Stan, in concert with many brilliant artists and other writers as well, created so many fucking characters, or what people nowadays call IP, like fucking intellectual property. You're right. Like, Mark Millar comes close in terms of, not even close, but he's the next guy I can think of in terms of, like, wow, he created a bunch of shit over the span of a decade. Yeah. He's very prolific.
And Kirby also. Like, once he went over to DC and once he was Unchained, and
absolutely,
he just went to fucking town. Like, there's a bunch of people who did that. I mean, I always think of, like, Rod Serling's run on The Twilight Zone as maybe the single greatest television feat ever, because he wrote half of 200 episodes by himself.
Wow.
And all of them are short stories. Like, there are no recurring characters. There's no recurring plot. Like, just the amount of invention to make the Twilight Zone work is astonishing, but none of them had to have legs. Like, none of those characters in those little episodes needed to carry from one episode to the next. When you create, fucking Spider-Man, when you create Fantastic Four, those characters have to be strong enough to carry story for decades. And that's the thing. Like, not only did he invent these characters, but he built a framework for story that allowed us to keep telling stories about those characters for decades since. And that's no fucking small feat.
I often refer to him, to his face, over the course of the last 23 years, particularly more in the last 10 years than anything else. And I'll probably be saying it, until the day I die. He was kind of like a modern day Mark Twain. I used to say he's the Mark Twain of comic books. And then I was like, no, he's just the modern day Mark Twain. But when you put up how prolific he was against Mark Twain, I think he beats Mark Twain as well.
Yeah, I mean, if he was writing 10 books a month for 10 years, it's a lot of fucking books. And even the writing that Stan was doing, which was, hey, Steve, here's what Spider-Man's going to do this month. He's going to swing on a web, and he's going to save the girl and punch Mysterio in the face. And then Steve Ditko would go off and draw that shit and bring it back, and he would then write the dialogue for it all. Like, the way I write comics is I'm writing 22 pages of comic, and somebody's drawing 22 pages of comic. He wrote a paragraph. It was like, go off and do that. But he still had to write all the dialogue. And half the time, the art that came back was not the paragraph he sent off. It's like, oh, shit, there's a helicopter crash in this, and we're in Vietnam now? All right, I guess. And somebody's on drugs? Sure. And Daredevil can see? Why not? And, like, just having to stitch that shit together and then do that for 10 books in a month. Like, it's an astonishing amount of work for one guy to do. And to do well.
That's the weird thing is, like, he had, of course, everybody... There's a generation of kids who know him as like, that's Spider-Man's daddy or something like that. But they know him from the movies. Mm-hmm. But they don't, and they know from their parents. Like, he seems to be something that's been passed down. My dad passed Stan Lee down to me as well. Like, I knew Stan Lee's name from the books. I knew his voice before I ever heard his voice because he was very vocal in his comics, in the editorial section, in Stan's soapbox and stuff like that. But I remember first time I saw him and heard his voice, I was a kid. I think he was on like the Today Show or Good Morning America or something like that. And my father was like, Kev, come in here. And I went into the living room and he's like, that's Stan Lee. And I said, Spider-Man Stan Lee. And he said, yes. And we sat there and watched it together. And it was this weird, like, we know this together. This is information that we share. I don't know. It seems now that that's what happens. I read a bunch of people, I put up an Instagram post. There were a bunch of wonderful comments in the threads. And not comments like, hey, good job, but comments, these wonderful stories where people talk about, like, I would sit there with my dad and watch these movies for the last 10 years, and when he showed up on screen, I'd be like, there's like Stan Lee. And like, I read that and I was like, fuck, I know that. Like, I know what it's like to be able to share something with a parent that you think is fucking vastly important, and the parent think is important for a different reason altogether. My old man was just like, there's a guy who makes comic books for a living. Isn't that something? Like, he thought that was just impressive. But me, I'm like, yeah, but he's so much more than that. So he seems to be something that's now passed down from generation to generation. Kind of like Mark Twain, I guess, mm-hmm. right? Like, crazy.
Yeah, everybody will have a different piece of him and what that piece meant to them. For if you're 12 years old going to the movies, like, oh, there's the dude who's in all the movies. I've seen that guy. He's kind of funny. He's got a really good one-liner. He called Tony Stark Tony Stank once. That was cool. For people our age who came to the Marvel Universe as readers in the 70s and 80s, like, he was the face of comics. He was the one guy you could put a name on who said, that guy makes comics. You didn't, even if maybe you knew Frank Miller from drawing Daredevil, maybe you knew Julie Schwartz just because you went to a convention, somebody mentioned his name, but you would never see any of those guys on TV, on the radio, like, repping it. And I really think that Stan, in a way, gave birth to modern fandom in that he built a relationship with that brand unlike any relationship we'd ever had with a brand before. You know, like you would read a Marvel comic, it was make mine Marvel. Don't be like brand X. You know, the guys across the street. You're a Marvel reader. You're not a DC reader. You don't read anything but Marvel.
The distinguished competition.
The distinguished competition. Like
the Merry Marvel Marching
we
Society.
identified
the
ourselves.
No Prize. The man
No
who
Prize.
invented the No Prize.
What's in the envelope?
The No Prize. Yeah.
Empty. But like you became a Marvel person. Like that was part of your identity. It's like,
He
no,
stoked the flames of fandom.
I like Marvel, not DC. I like this, not like that. Like who goes around saying I like Paramount, not Universal? You know? Like, just people can make movies and you go to the movies. But he was like, no, I only want these books. These are the books that speak to me. These are the books that tell stories that I feel I relate to. And DC, as good as they might have been in the 70s and 80s, even the 50s and 60s, like they gave us the first superhero. But they never gave us that sense of belonging that we got from Marvel. And some of that's because they were writing about teenagers. Some of it's because they were writing about misfits, all of which you had problems and anxieties and just struggling with angst. And how do I pay the bills? And how do I talk to that girl? And how do I do all of this shit and save the world? And what happens when I come home and I can't pay my rent? Like, that was not a thing in DC books until it was the thing in Marvel books.
No, in DC books, they were just like, look at this poor boy billionaire. How will he get over the grief of losing his parents? He's a bat.
Oh, that boy crazy.
The Marvel formula was science gone nuts, right? Because they post atomic bomb, they're atomic age characters. So everything is like a science-based mishap that happens to a real person. Yeah. He believed in telling the story of the man or the woman more than the Superman or the Superwoman. Like, tell that story first, which is something which is aped now in like programming. All those CW shows, they try to tell you the story of the person, not the super, person first. I mean, and then later on, they're like, fucking, the boy will run very fast to solve his problems and shit.
Totally. Like, there was the rare 60s, 70s Marvel hero who was from outer space. You know, like they were all from fucking Brooklyn or from Queens or from the Bronx or from Hell's Kitchen. Like, they were all people for whom something happened. Like, nobody crashed in a comet. Nobody's phased in from another dimension. They were just fucking people.
Yeah.
You know, and they were just kids who the unlucky luck of having a gene that went wonky. And suddenly I can shoot through schools with my eyes. And suddenly I can't touch anybody. And, oh shit, like, what do I do when the world hates me because of who I am, not what I do?
What year was X-Men?
63? I think.
So he's creating from what, 61 to 70?
72.
72?
Yeah.
What is one of the last things he does?
I don't know if there's
Black Panther?
Black Panther was 60-something. Black Panther was relatively early, 68. I don't remember the last thing he did. I mean, it might have been Squirrel Girl.
That was Jack, right?
I think, but it was also Stan.
Really?
Yeah.
It sounds like a Stan thing. Squirrel Girl. Run with it.
We did the radioactive thing like 9 times. What did she get bitten by?
First time I met him was on the set of Mallrats. First time I heard him, though, was on the phone prior to that. Like, I told this story a zillion times, but I wrote the script for Mallrats' first draft and sent it to Jim Jacks. He was the producer, one of the producers. And I said, he read it, and he called me up and stuff. And he goes, this is funny. He's going, who's this one character you wrote that, Brody gets advice from? I said, well, he's like meant to be like a Stan Lee, like the most famous name in comic books and stuff. And he's like, why don't you just write it for Stan Lee? And I was like, well, I don't know Stan Lee. And he's like, well, I do. And I was like, Hollywood is good. They know each other here and shit.
Who else do you know?
Fuck. So I said, well, ask him if he wants to be in movies. He goes, I will. I'll ask him. I'm going out to Dan Tana's with him next week and shit. So he asks him, and he calls me back. He goes, Stan is interested. He wants to do it. He loves to act. I was like, oh, my God, fantastic. Let me rewrite the scenes. So I rewrote the scenes now, knowing it's Stan Lee and stuff. Sent it to fax those pages, because it was like 5 pages, to Jim Jacks. He read the scene and stuff. He goes, I'm going to send it on to Stan. He sends it on to Stan. I talked to Jim Jacks the next day. I said, what'd he say? In his best fucking Stan Lee impression, Jim Jacks goes, his exact quote was this: I would never say this shit. I said, so we lost him? And he goes, no. He's going, I talked him down. I told him it was his movie stand. He said, but he got one request for you. I said, really? He goes, yeah, he's going to ask you himself. I said, oh, what? What do you mean? He's going, you're calling him. He's going to ask you this question. Then he'll tell you whether or not he could be in the movie. And I was like, okay. Get a phone call from Stan Lee. Kevin Smith? Yes, this is Stan Lee. I was like, I know. I said, oh my God, I'm a huge fan my whole life. And went into the usual spiel, and he was like, thank you. I could tell that you were a fan based on these pages. He's going, but listen, you have me telling this boy a story, and it's a story about the one that got away. But I don't have one that got away. I got one. And she's at home, and if I say these things in a movie, she's not going to let me come home. It's adorable. A 72-year-old man still gave a shit that his wife would be mad at him and stuff. So I was like, oh, I understand. He goes, so what I need you to do is, can you write a scene where afterwards, like I say that it was all a joke or something? And I was like, oh my God, yeah, sure, absolutely. If that's what it takes for you to say, yeah, I'll write any fucking scene, yeah. So in the movie, you know, he runs into TS, and TS is like, hey man, did you do it? And you get the impression that TS set Stan up for it and stuff. And that was because of Stan. Like, that scene exists because he didn't want to upset his wife. And, you know, he was like, I'm playing myself in the movie. It's a weird line, right? So he was like, I want to make sure that everybody knows that Stan Lee would never have had this happen because he married the love of his life and stuff. Really, really adorable. So I said, absolutely, I could write that. And he said, then I'll see you on set. He goes, I'll see you in Hollywood, but he didn't know we were shooting in fucking Minnesota. So that turned out to be another discussion where Jim was just like, yeah, man, Stan didn't know that we were out here in Minneapolis. So I was like, he tried to back out. He goes, well, you know, it's cold out here.
But 73 years old.
He was 73, man. And there was, at that time, 1995, like, we better do this quick. The man's old. But he lived another 23 fucking years. You couldn't stop the guy. So I meet him on set, first day, the day that we shoot the scene with him. And, man, he was just fucking everything that you'd hoped. He was charming. He was affable. He was lovely. He told the same stories I'd heard at Comic-Cons and read in comics and stuff. I learned repetition from Stan Lee. The idea that, like, sometimes you just can't assume that everybody has heard the fucking story. Like, his whole thing with comics was just like, you got to write a comic book like it's somebody's first comic book. Every comic book is going to be somebody's first comic book. So it has to be able to appeal to a brand new reader, not just like the people who know the story. So you got to repeat yourself sometimes. He repeated himself many times, man. But, you know, it was part of his charm. It's like, oh, he's telling this story again? Here we go. You know, and settle in and stuff. And it was a well-told tale. So he was wonderful on set. We had cue cards. Because, again, the man was like 73 and stuff. And unlike these current Marvel movies that he was cameoing in where they give him one line, he had a fucking scene. He had a boatload of dialogue and stuff. So we had big ass cue cards. There's only one real cut in the movie where you could see him kind of look away from Brody. The rest of the time he's looking right at him. But every once in a while he'd have to glance off to the side and stuff like that. If you watch that scene, it's really beautiful. He has this wonderful delivery talking about, you know, this girl, this fictional girl. That was like, I kind of took a scene from Citizen Kane, where one of the gentlemen talks about seeing this woman, you know, on a train, and like, not a day goes by he doesn't think of that woman. He wishes he had said something to her and stuff. So I kind of adapted that, stole that, homaged it, stole it. And so that's what he was doing. So he's walking, you know, his line, he goes, take care, and he walks away from Brody. And he's heading off in this direction. And so Brody goes, Stan, and he turns around, yeah. And he goes, she really meant that much to you? And Stan's got a wonderful delivery, really serious, nailed it in one take. He goes, Brody, I'd give it up. I'd give it all up, all of it, for just one more day with her. Take care. And then he turns around and walks in the opposite fucking direction of the way he was going. So Mosier at that time, he goes, do we do another take? I was like, fuck no, don't worry about it. That was beautiful. I don't give a shit which way he's going and shit. He hung out. We took pictures. Walter Flanagan, who I loved comic books with, and later on did Comic Book Men with, which Stan appeared on multiple times. It was a big day for us when he came to set because he was like, "Oh shit, I'm bringing all my books," and he's signing everything. And I was like, "Don't use him. He's 73 for Christ's sakes." But we took pictures with him, and not like this was not the days of selfies because nobody had their own cameras and stuff. Thankfully, there was a guy on set photographer, Carlos Antal, I believe his name was, who was taking pictures of us with Stan. So you can find it online. There's a picture of him sitting in the director's chair and making Spider-Man hands, and I'm behind him making Spider-Man hands with like a weird goofy grin. Is something we replicated like years later, which I just threw up on Instagram today. So that was my first experience with the guy. And when he was done shooting, he was just like, "Now you got to put me in all your movies." And I was like, "Okay." And then that movie died. But I remember when the premiere happened, he was at the premiere party. Like MTV did a premiere special, and he was there on camera. He was like one of the biggest celebrities there. The cast went on to become famous and stuff, like Affleck and shit. But at the time, like Michael Rooker was pretty famous because he was in Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer. And Stan was famous because he was Stan Lee and stuff. So after that, I'd see him at Wizard Cons all the time. Like I'd go to a lot of Wizard Cons. I'd see him at San Diego as well. But I remember we saw him at, it was 96 or 97, Wizard Con in Chicago. We were on the floor and we had a booth, USQ booth, and me and Muse were sitting there signing. And then Stan came over and was like, "Boys!" And we were like, "Stan!" because we'd worked with him and stuff. And we chit-chatted, and then he had this signing that was right next to us where you had to go up 3 steps and you were on a stage. And so, he was like, "I'm going to do a signing. You guys come up and sign with me." And we're like, "Oh, okay." And he goes up the stairs, do the signing. We sign with him for a little bit, then we go back to our booth. He's done with the signing, and he calls it off to us from the top of the stairs. "Boys, I'm heading off now." We're like, "All right, Stan, we'll see you." He goes, "What are you doing tonight?" And we're like, "I think we're going to the steakhouse." He goes, "I'll see you there with Joe Quesada." And so we're like, "I'll see you there." Turns and proceeds to walk off the stage without the stairs and go right to the fucking ground. And this at point, we made Mallrats in 95. He's 73. This is 2 years later. So he's 75, man. And at that point, I was like, I think we just witnessed the end of Stan Lee.
Tune in next week, True Believers.
I swear to you, this man was a power walker. I forgot about that. My friend Vincent Pereira reminded me today. He texted me yesterday. He was like, "Man, I remember, like, it felt like yesterday I was power walking with him in the mall." Vinny was a PA on the flick, and Stan, like, was a power walker. And he was like, "Oh, this is fantastic. It's a mall." So he gets to mall walk through it and shit. So Vinny was tasked with like, "You stay with this guy." And Vinny's big complaint at the end of the night was like, "My fucking calves hurt. He's fast." And so he brought up, he was just like, "I remember just mall walking with him like all throughout the production. Felt like yesterday." So he was healthy and fucking fit, even at 75. And at 75 was probably in better shape than I was at that age, which was like 28 or whatever the fuck. Stan goes down, we go up from our seats like, and instantly, as if he was a fucking cartoon bendable, he pops right back up and he's just like, "I'm okay." Dusted himself off, "Excelsior," and then walked away. What do you got? I got tons. I'm sure you got Stan.
I only ever met him once.
Get out of here.
I swear to God. It was 2008 at San Diego Comic-Con.
Okay.
And I had been writing comics for Wildstorm for about a year. I sold my first couple of books, The Highwayman and then a book called Push, to Jim Lee. And Jim sort of became a little bit of a mentor. I've talked about my harassing Jim Lee story. And don't do that. He really doesn't like. You get one, and I was the one who took I'm going to email Jim Lee for a year and beg him to listen to my pitch, and he did.
And he's like, "You just ruined it for everybody
Sorry,
else."
buddy. You fucked that shit up. And so I'm at San Diego. I went to some rooftop party, as one does in San Diego, and it was like 10:30, 11 o'clock. I was done. It was like a Thursday, so I had 2 more days of crazy pants going on. So I'm on my way out. Like Daughtry is playing on the stage because it was 2008. That's how that goes. And I see Jim Lee come in as I'm leaving because Jim is probably 10 years older than I am and has more energy than anybody I've ever met. Like, Jim Lee's just like a fucking dynamo. And I was like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm just coming here. I got 2 more parties after this, but I wanted to come. I wanted to pay homage. Like, to who? It's like, Stan. It's like, Stan's here? It's like, yeah, you ever meet Stan? I said, no, Jim, I've never met Stan. Come on, let's go meet Stan. So I'm walking with fucking Jim Lee, weaving through this party, and we end up at some cabana, like, off in the distance. And, you know, Stan at this point is 85, I guess, 10 years ago, and it's late at night, and he's kind of sitting in this cabana, and he sees Jim, and like it turns on in a second. It's like, Jim, how are you? And Jim says, hey, it's really good to see you, Stan. Stan, have you ever met Marc? He's like, no, Marc, this is Stan Lee. And Stan goes, no relation. I was like, you know what? Good for you, old man. And like, we didn't say much because he's like, listen, I gotta go. I got a wall-to-wall schedule tomorrow. And if you hadn't heard, I'm 85 years old, so I'm just gonna like say a couple of howdy doos and go. But just like, I got to fucking shake the dude's hand, and for a minute I got to say, hey, thanks. That was amazing. And then off he went. All right, true believers, I gotta go to sleep. I gotta be at Hall H.
Everybody did. Everybody, like, who met him, liked to thank him.
Yeah.
Particularly in the later years, right? But that's what I saw at cons. But I did it in '95 when I met him. So you imagine it was going on back then and even prior to that as well. That's what you felt. You felt gratitude for the guy because, you know, I imagine people do it now because, like, I fucking love those movies and those characters, and you're in those movies and you created those characters. But for us, the readers, it was thanks for that. Thanks for the moral compass. You know, you got to remember, I was a Catholic school kid, and I guarantee you, my morality didn't come from the Catholic Church. It came from reading comic books. Stan Lee fashioned my morality. He taught me it was better to be a good guy than a bad guy. Like, very simple morality tales. Way more entertaining than the comic book that I was reading in church. You know, way more adventures. You know?
More punching.
Yeah, way more villains too. There's only one villain in that other book. So I get it. I get why you want to thank him.
Yeah, and you know, like I don't think there has been a more perfectly crafted distillation of what American morality is than with great power must also come great responsibility.
Yeah.
Like, to a certain degree, that's what this country should be when it's at its best, is we have great power. We have more power than any other country on the planet. We have more resources, more manpower, more innovation, all that shit. But the responsibility has to come with that. So it's a scalable moral also. It's for you in this street, like, if you can help somebody, you should. If you got a little bit of money, you should help. If you can lift the thing off a guy, you should. Like, you should do the things you can do within your power. And it scales up, like, as a community, as a state, as a country, as a world. If you have the power to do something, you should do it and do it wisely. And as a kid, like, it was George Lucas and Chuck Jones and Stan Lee. Like, and that's how I built my moral compass. And it was not the good book.
Chuck Jones?
Yeah.
What like Roadrunner morality?
Hard working, yeah, absolutely. And fucking Bugs Bunny was from the Bronx. I'm from the Bronx. Like, with a little wit, with a little verve, like, you can get anywhere.
That's adorable.
I am adorable.
All right, let's see what else I got written down here, man.
You were going to tell me a story.
I'm going to tell you a story.
I am now with bated breath waiting for an Armie Hammer story.
Oh, shit. All right.
They've heard the story, apparently, and I still...
That's true. I told Marc, we were in the alleyway in the green room before the show, and...
yeah. We spared no expense building that green room.
No, there was a jeopardy of Marc hearing it for the first time. I was like, everyone fucking shut up so he can hear it fresh on the show. And then we've skipped it up until now. Thank you for reminding me. Armie Hammer, the actor.
Yes.
Who I've interviewed for IMDb. Seemed like a really cool guy. And I still think he's... I'm not like, kill him after this. He's still a good guy. But this, I thought, was poorly timed tweet. Or just stupid. He put up a tweet that was to the effect of, like, it's so nice that everyone shows, their condolences for Stan Lee by putting up all their photos of themselves with Stan Lee. And so, you know, a bunch of people were like, man, fuck you, you peach fucking, you eating fucking, I saw that movie, you know, fucking, people got shitty. Fuck you, Lone Ranger. And then, you know, the tweet seemed to have a lot of likes, so it seemed like a bunch of people agreed with him and shit like that.
The ratio was still...
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't go honestly that deep on it, because when I read the tweet, I was like, oh, you don't get it, man. Like, maybe he just don't get it. Give him the benefit of the doubt, because he's like, didn't think it through, or he's fucking obtuse. But it's like, that's the rich tapestry that the man wove in this lifetime, is like, so many fucking people have photos with him. He never said no. He wasn't one of these fucking pricks that like, hey man, can I take a picture? No, I ain't got time. They fucking walk away. Stan would take the time. And yeah, you go to a con and you could pay and take the time with him as well. And that was more recent. But like for fucking most of his life, if you just rolled by him, you're like, oh, can I take a picture? Of course. He'd stop and take a picture with you and stuff like that. So I didn't read that as like, ew, this is gross. Everyone's cashing in on Stan. I was like, that's Stan to a T. Like he fucking look at all these photos. Look at how happy everybody who's standing next to him is. It's like they're meeting fucking Santa Claus by way of Jesus Christ. So I thought Armie Hammer was way off on that. It's like, it just read like, you don't have a picture with Stan Lee, do you, Armie Hammer? You know. Jealous much? Fuck.
Yeah, it's funny. I saw this thing online today. It'll tangentially get back there. There was this clip out of Denmark, and they did this social experiment where they took a bunch of people from different places in Denmark. Like here's a bunch of guys who were raised on a farm. Here's people who've never seen a cow. Here's people who live in the city. Here's people in the country. Here's people who were, you know, fucking jocks and theater people, and they put everybody in little boxes. And they said, you know, you are all choose to consider yourselves one thing, and that's how you sort of go through life. But then they started asking questions like, which of you are step-parents? Like, which of you were bullies in high school? Which of you were bullied in high school? And then just watching people from these boxes drift away and then collide with other people who were in other separate boxes. It was basically showing we are all far more alike than we like to think we are. But if you confront them with, here's the thing that you're all sort of in touch with, then you can begin to have honest conversations about where you're going and what you're feeling and how we can connect in ways when it's easier to divide. And it feels like this weird photo experiment is that Stan Lee is the point of light that connects all of these people, maybe who would never ever have any connection, never have any commonality. But if you look at Instagram, you look at Twitter, and you see this wall of people, and half of that picture is identical, and half of it is somebody who does not look like anybody else. And those other pictures doesn't come from someplace else as these other pictures. Like Stan Lee is the nexus through which
he's the constant.
He's the constant. He's the you know, the hand up on the fucking window, not Penny's boat, but is Stan Lee. And we all can sort of draw that.
The hand on the window. Is that a Titanic reference?
Lost.
Lost?
Yeah.
I thought you were saying like the sex scene when Kate Winslet was fucking. I was like, what does that have to do with Stan Lee?
Because she wanted to be drawn like those French girls, and who better? Excelsior.
It was an homage to Stan and Jack, that scene. All right, let's see. What else do I got? So I'm at Wizard Cons for a long time. Oh, we did Stan Lee's Marvel's Mutants and Monsters. That happened when I think when I was moving out here, when I was working on maybe we were in post on Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. Yeah, I think so. Or maybe this was right after that, because it was right around like post September 11th, I think. Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back had come out, or was just about to come out right around, like came out in August. September 11th happened like a month later. I want to say that like this was slightly after September 11th, then it came out like a few months after that. They had gotten in touch with me, the production company, and they were like, we need somebody to interview Stan Lee, and you've worked with Stan Lee. Would you like to sit down and interview him? And I was like, oh my God, yeah, what's it for? And they're like, we're just going to make a DVD of Stan talking about Marvel history. And he asked if you would do it. He said he did a movie with you. And I was like, I did, Mallrats. And the guy goes, never heard of it. He's going, but Stan requested you. And so I was like, oh my God, I'd love to. So we went to, I believe it was shot at Heidi Ho, the comic store in Santa Monica, if I remember correctly. But what I remember most about it is, other than how wonderful he was, like what a fantastic storyteller. You're talking about a guy who knew how to be Stan Lee at that point in his sleep. He was so fucking good at it. If you watch the DVD, I'm interviewing him, and here, I'll do an impression of me interviewing Stan Lee. Tell me a story.
I'm Stan Lee?
Yeah, no, you're Marc Bernardin.
Oh, I'm me.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I once I stole a bike because it felt like a good idea, and I drove it around the track at my high school just before graduation and tore up mud tracks all over the field.
Oh my God!
And then the next day they went to set up chairs and shit and wondered who the hell was the asshole who drove their bike all over the field just before graduation.
Watch the video. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing, and the whole time I'm like, because I'm like, I gotta fucking let him know that I'm locked in. And since then, I've of course learned like you could do that wordlessly as well, with just like Silent Bob it, like, so you're not fucking through the whole fucking interview. But that DVD, just like him being in Mallrats, lent me this like the comic book community credibility that I would not have had otherwise. Like Clerks didn't have anything about comic books in it really. There's one shot where they're sitting on the counter where Randall's watching TV, and it's a Batman, it's a detective annual with a Brian Boland cover. But like we didn't go deep into comics in that movie. Mallrats is where I let my comic freak flag fly. So him being in that movie lent me credibility. People are like, oh shit. Like, not only does he know Stan Lee, but Stan Lee's in the movie and he made him a character and stuff. And the movie did not set the world on fire. It didn't do well at all. Went right in the toilet. But he was on the poster. So people were like, oh, fucking, like, they're buddies and shit like that. Gave me credibility. That DVD gave me even more credibility because, like, they are fucking friends. They hang out. He knows them. This guy ahas over everything he says. So once again, he lifted me up, and he was always so complimentary. Like, he talked about Mallrats like it was this fucking great experience. And, like, for me, it was, because, like, I was working with him, but I never quite understood, like, what was his thing in it. But, like, we learned later in life, he was a ham. He loved to fucking be in movies. Like, and that was him, like, getting to fucking be in a movie and do dialogue. Prior to that, like on set, he was like, I've only done one other cameo. I said, I saw you in a Incredible Hulk, in Daredevil Incredible Hulk, the Trial of the Incredible Hulk. And he goes, I forgot about that. And he goes, I'm talking about, and was it the hearse or the nurse? Fuck, I forget what it was, but it was like a horror movie.
The purse?
Could be one of those three, but it was like a horror movie. He's got a brief appearance in, or something like that.
Ooh, so was it The Hand?
No, it wasn't The Hand.
Oh, because didn't Michael Caine play like a comic book illustrator who gets his hand chopped off?
But that would be amazing if he wasn't it. Like Stan the Man in The Hand. He did, man. He gave me lots of credibility that just I got to spend. I still spend it to this day. I mean, fucking, I spend it more now than I did even back then, because I was talking about this shit back in like 95 and being like comics and shit like that. And now we live in that world. Like, that's the beauty of Mallrats, and maybe the only reason why I'm still fucking like working today or considered somewhat relevant by some. Mallrats presupposed a world that we come to exist in now. When we made Mallrats, everybody knew who Stan Lee was in that movie. Like, oh, it's fucking Stan Lee. And that wasn't reality. But eventually, everybody did know who Stan Lee was. We came into this world, evolved into a world where your mother could pick out fucking Stan Lee in a movie. Your youngest child could pick out Stan Lee in a movie. Like, he became that fucking famous. He became as famous as we all saw him as comic book fans. And he got to see that.
Yeah, like that's, to me, when I think about, how I felt when I heard the news, like I was sad because, again, it's a guy who'd been in my life for as long as I'd had a life. And like you said, it always felt as if he would be. because it seemed as if he just was unwilling to not be. But for a guy to have created this shit back in the 60s and 70s, to have had his own dalliances with Hollywood that went awfully off the rails, to then watch as those things that he created exploded on the world and dominated. You know, like, who gets that? Like, who gets to see themselves recognized as a genius in their own time? Almost nobody. And for it to be as triumphant as it's been, and for him to be as celebrated as part of it as he was, like, nobody gets that victory lap.
And he was an ingredient too, like an essential ingredient, so much so that if they make a movie without him in it, people are like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Where was the cameo? You know, people get real...
Who do you think you are?
Exactly. There's certain things we expect, and a Stan cameo was one of them. Yeah, he became a touchstone at that point. Fuck. Okay, what else do I got? Dinner for Five. I did. Jon Favreau, I'd been on his show as a guest. He did the show on IFC years ago called Dinner for Five, which was great. He'd sit down with four people, different walks of life from the business usually, and fucking just eat at a restaurant and chit-chat. So one day he couldn't do it. He was getting ready to fucking be a great director, and I was never that. So he called me up and he goes, hey, I need somebody to fucking take the show over this week. And I thought of you because I know you love the sound of your own voice. And this is before podcasting. He was onto something and shit. So I said, yeah, I'd fucking do that in a heartbeat, man. Fucking, you gonna open up that door, man? I'll fucking Jay Leno this shit. I'll take your job. Like, okay. So he was like, you get to pick your panel. I said, get out of here. He goes, yeah, you get to talk to anybody you want to talk to. And he's like, that's kind of it. Like, we're interested in who you would talk to and stuff. So try not to use anybody we ever used before. I was like, all right, man, here's my panel. And so Jason Lee, he was like, great, we've never had him before. Let's do him. I said, I just finished Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. Mark Hamill's in it. I want to use Mark Hamill. He goes, oh, fuck, Luke Skywalker? Yeah, fucking, yeah, of course, bring him on. And then I said, you know who I talked to the other day? He's real fucking great. I told him the story about, working on fucking Superman, because he's working on Superman right now, a different Superman and shit. But you know the guy that does Alias, J.J. Abrams? He's like, yeah, bring him on. Never heard of him. Bring him on. Years ago. He goes, you got one more. Who is it? I said, Stan Lee. He goes, Marvel Stan Lee? I said, yeah. And he goes, oh, that's a great panel. He goes, fuck, I wish I was doing the show. I said, no, it's my panel.
Locking him down.
You can see the show online. Stan's wonderful in it and stuff. But it's ironic, he's sitting there. We're all on Favreau's show. Favreau would go on to create the Marvel Universe, right? With Feige when he made Iron Man and shit. Built a spine upon which the Marvel Universe has hung for 10 fucking years and stuff. JJ, of course, was sitting across from Mark Hamill and shit. At one point, Mark Hamill was talking about, I always thought that this is what they should have done with Luke in the movies if they kept going. This was when there was no Star Wars in sight. This is 2001, right? But JJ's taking notes, listening and going on. But Stan was wonderful, man. Like, and he did, Stan was wonderful on many levels. What was one of the things that was wonderful about him was his repeat playability. So he reused that Lee joke because Jason Lee was there. He was like, no relation. Wasn't nearly as good as the Jim Lee version, though, because the Jim Lee version has the component to it of thing. Like, yeah.
Yeah, Agent Johnson, no relation.
Yes. All right, that was, let me see, what else do I got? One time I gave him the DVD award. They had this award ceremony, and he got a Lifetime Achievement Award. Let's see, that was 2000. I was living out here at this point.
Was it an MTV Lifetime?
It wasn't. It was like a DVD Visionary Award for the DVD. I forget what the name of the organization was, but it was mostly based on home video. And they were giving him an award for Lifetime Achievement, creating characters. I think Blade was big at that point, so they were like, there's your tie-in and stuff. But he was wonderful and funny and charming that night. And when it was at not the Pantages, but the theater that's like across the street, down the street. Yes. He was when he got up, I introduced him and stuff. And when I said, give it up for Stan Lee, fucking place went nuts. And this is years before a Marvel movie and stuff like that. but people knew who he was. I was wearing a Marvel jersey and shit. Got a picture of that, of me and him. I'm standing behind him out of focus holding his award, and he's standing there at the mic holding fucking court doing Stan Lee for the crowd. And it was wonderful to fucking see. I read on Twitter today, I don't know if it's popular sentiment or just somebody wrote it, and I wish I remember who the author was, but they said the greatest character Stanley Lieber ever created was Stan Lee. And it's true. Stan Lee was a character that he created. Like, it was somebody he put on and then became that guy. By the end of his life, the two were interchangeable. But Stan Lee was a tub thumper, you know, a showman, a salesman. Mm-hmm. Dude taught me how to be a salesman. At the end of the day, that's what Stan did for, you know, he was a creator, but he was a salesman as well. It was not enough to, like, I created this comic book. You had to fucking sell it. He became an editor at one point. So it had to go beyond simply like, I wrote a comic book, you got to sell it. And he believed in it. In hockey, they have this term, sell the game. If you believe in it, you sell the game. Hey, man, you got to come see a hockey game with me and shit like that. Stan sold comics, like in a big way, sold me on comics for my life. And the ideals and the values that he instilled in his work, I built my personal and private life around. Like, I work by those codes and I work in the world and play with the characters and comment on the characters that he fucking created and stuff like that. Daredevil premiere. I remember seeing him at the Daredevil premiere, Affleck's Daredevil movie, and we all took a picture together, me, Ben, and fucking Stan Lee. Saw Stan after the movie. Stan is a fucking wonderful gentleman.
Where's this going?
I said, what'd you think? He goes, a lot more than they did, apparently. But he liked it. He's in it, and it's a cameo in it, and he liked it. He liked Marc a lot, the director and stuff. He liked Affleck. He thought that he was like, he's wonderful. He looks like Matt Murdock. But you know, before, I don't know if anyone remembers. This is a true story. They originally went to Matt Damon to play Matt Murdock, and then he passed, and then they went to Ben, and Ben was like, "Fuck yeah!" And then.
I like those apples.
That's how he wound up, yes. He liked them apples very much and stuff. So he was a fan, man. When Affleck was living at the condo when we were making Chasing Amy, he was like, I want to read something. Give me something, because I had comic books everywhere. And I gave him Dark Knight Returns. He's like, I fucking love this, man. This is amazing. Frank Miller and shit like that. They should do this as a movie. I was like, no one's ever going to do that as a movie. And you'll never see that version of Batman ever. So later on, he was like, what else you got, man? And I said, well, you love fucking Dark Knight Returns. You would love Frank Miller's fucking Daredevil. He did Daredevil before he did Batman, man. So here's the source material. And then he later on went on to play Daredevil, which he referred to it all the time as fucking Frank. That's Frank Miller, man. That's Frank Miller. I was like, yes, well, Frank Miller did a run of Daredevil. I said, but, you know, he was created by Stan. Yeah, but that's fucking Frank Miller, man. I'm gonna do a Frank Miller movie and shit.
Shady Stanley is kind of my favorite Stanley.
The one that drops low-key shade?
The one that drops low-key fucking shade like there's no tomorrow. There's this amazing clip online that resurfaced over the last couple of days. It's like 3.5 minutes long, and it's Stanley hovering over the shoulder of Rob Liefeld and Todd McFarlane.
Yes.
As they're at the drawing board, and they're like, yeah, man, we're gonna make this character. We're calling it Overkill. And it's like, so he's got this fucking like rocket launchers on his knees, and he's got bandoliers and everything. And Stan's like, you guys don't think much about this, do you? He's like, no, man, we just like to make it come up as we go, and it's very free flowing. It's like, you'd be better off if you thought about it a little bit. And it's like, no, it's like he's got fucking rocket launchers on his knees to shoot small people. Like literally, just every fucking, just you could see it like bubbling up in him. Oh, this guy can't draw feet at all. How? It is the most delicious, like 3.5 minutes you will watch today. It really is.
I watched.
Because he was an art director too. Like he was writer, art director, editor in chief of Marvel Comics all at the same time.
He had an eye.
He had an eye. He knew how to fucking package. It's like that. No.
I watched him throw low-key shade at Johnny Rotten. To his fucking face. It was so strange. We had this poetry event. My kid was in school. She went to the Hollywood Schoolhouse here in town, right down the street. And they had it was Poetry Month, and they had an idea to do this like poetry event as a fundraiser. So, my wife was like, we'll do it at our house. And I was like, what? And we wound up hosting it there. I was like the MC, and we had a fucking full slate of guests. It was a pretty impressive slate of guests. I got up and introduced. I was like, thank you for coming tonight and giving up for that most noble and needy of causes, private school children. And introduced a host of guests. One of them was Stan Lee. Stan came twice. We had 2 poetry events, and he came both years, and people fucking loved him both times. But before he came the first year, I said, hey man, we're doing this poetry event. And we're going, oh, I would love to. He's like, can I do the Raven? And I was like, oh my God, yes, we'd all love to see that, yes. Please, oh my God. So the day before the poetry event, night before, poetry event, it's going to be like 200 people in the house and shit like that. Everything arranged for the next day. You got to get like fucking parkers because we live on a hill and there's nowhere to put cars and shit. So all that shit's going to happen. Caterer shows up next day. This is the night before. There's me and the wife. Kids out of the house with her grandparents. We're boning. Fucking brrring, brrring. Somebody rings the doorbell, which rings the phone. Answer the phone. Hello? Hey, this is Stan Lee. I said, hey man, how are you? And he goes, great. And I'm like, what's up? And he goes, oh, I'm here to read poetry. And I said, oh, Stan, mind you, I'm naked having this conversation. I said, Stan, that's tomorrow night. He goes, you're kidding. And I said, yeah, there's like no cars here. And he goes, oh my God, I'm embarrassed. I thought it was tonight. I said, you're embarrassed? I'm in the middle of having sex right now. He goes, I'll see you tomorrow. Have fun. It's off to his car and takes off.
I slipped a no prize under the door.
So weird. One of the weirdest moments of my adult life. If I could go back in time and tell the young comic book reader, one day Stan Lee's going to come to your house, but you can't answer because you're balls deep. He came back the next night and put on a hell of a fucking show, man. Both times. He did The Raven once, and then he wrote a poem. What was it? And God Spoke, I believe it was, or something like that. What was it? And God Woke. Is that it? Yes. Really fucking beautiful stuff. But it was crazy. Everyone in the room went nuts for him, man. So one year he's there. I think it was the first year or the second year. Might be the second year. The guests, a bunch of weird, not weird people, but a weird list of disparate people put together and stuff. Means that at one point I'm sitting at my patio table, Stan Lee's sitting to my left, Johnny Rotten from the Sex Pistols, who was also reading poetry that night and scaring the fuck out of everybody. In the really delicious way, man, to be fair. Everybody was like, entertaining the crowd and shit. He got up and did a screaming read of his song Abortion at the fucking crowd.
For kids.
Oh my God. And in the front row, they were like smiling and laughing because they were like, and he was like, I'm fucking serious! It was a fucking killer end to the show. We were like, that happened, everybody. So that was the end of the night. The beginning of the night, before the show begins, there I am sitting at the table, there's Stan, and there's Johnny Rotten. And so Stan is being Stan. And he's just poking fun. Like, he'd like to throw low-key shade. Not in a shitty way, but he was old man, so he could get away with saying stuff and whatnot. So he's like, look at you. Look how you're dressed. This is how you come to a poetry event? And he's like, what's fucking wrong with this? And he's like, you're dressed so funny. He's going, this guy, look at him in the hockey jersey. He's already the funny dresser. He's going, you should come in a suit. I came in a sweater. Johnny Rotten goes, do you know who I am, Dad? And he goes, yeah, you're the guy dressed like that. He goes, I'm rotten. He goes, I could have told you that. It was adorable. He sat there taking shots, man. It was fucking nuts.
It's like Mr. Rogers if he didn't give a fuck.
Because that's the thing. Like, I'd known him we met him in 95, right? So I'd known him for 23 years. Is that math correct? Yes. And I knew him through all the I don't give a fuck years. You know what I'm saying? From like 73 on or however old he was at that point. It's like, I'm in my declining years. So now I'm going to say everything I want. And he kept saying it for 2 decades. He said shit like that. Magic Man. Let's see, what else do I got, man? 2006, I did an event with him and Joe Quesada at UCLA called Marvel Then and Now. It kind of looked at the 2 eras. Stan had been the editor-in-chief of an entire era. And Joe Quesada was currently the editor-in-chief of that era of Marvel Comics. He's gone on to be the COO and stuff. But that was this weird, wonderful kind of sold-out event at UCLA that we shot for the Hero Initiative. I think you could still buy them through the Hero Initiative folks. Magical night where, he told the Marvel story yet again, all the stories that I knew very well from the DVD I'd done with him like 10 years before, or less than 10 years before. But each one elegantly fucking told, and he held the crowd wrapped. He loved to be a jokester. Like, he was honestly kind of tired of telling the fucking stories about the characters all the time. So he just liked to heckle the audience. And people had to take it because they're like, ha ha ha, he made fun of me. It was kind of magical. Next up, I've got Fatman on Batman at my house. Holy shit. He came over to my place one day to record Fatman on Batman. Sat down, did a great episode. Max brought him as his guy at the time, his body man. So we got a lot of stairs in my house. You've seen them. I'm walking down with Stan, making sure that he fucking covers all the way down, and he's chatting the whole fucking time. So chatty. And I'm like, let's chat when we get down these stairs. Like, let's not talk and move at the same time.
I've seen you fall once. We're not doing it again.
No shit. So get him safely down to like the first floor landing. And then there's like 1 step and then 9 steps down to the door. And those 9 steps down to the door are hard ceramic concrete. Like, it's not pleasant if you fall. So we get him down to the platform and stuff like that. He only has the 1 platform and then the stairs, and he's home free. So I'm like, I'm going to stand here. I've already come down 3 flights with him. I don't want to embarrass him by walking him to the door and stuff. Like, this is enough. Give him his dignity and his pride and stuff. He's walking to the door. So, I say, all right, man, good seeing you, Stan. And he's walking forward, and he turns, he goes, you too, Kev. And instantly fucking goes off the step and then trips on to the next landing and then goes off that, which all I see in slow-mo is like every headline going, Kevin Smith kills comic book legend Stan Lee in Murder House. And it's all happening in slow, and he is going, man. He's twisted and about to fall face fucking first in a big bad way. Max, his body man, comes out of nowhere, catches him. Just fucking catches him before he hits the ground, lifts him right back to his feet as if he's done this 1,000 times. And I go, Jesus, Stan. He goes, I'm good. Max got me. Goodbye. Out they fucking went, man. Scary, scary shit.
Just a Tuesday with Stan.
Pretty much. We did a commercial together right around the time of Age of Ultron when it came out. Audi wanted to do a spot, the Stan Lee School of Cameo Acting. You can find it online. It's an adorable little spot where, it's like Stan Lee, the master of cameo acting, and he's conducting a class. And in the class is Jason Mewes and me, Michael Rooker, and Tara Reid.
One of these things is not like the other.
It's a fun spot, man. And Lou Ferrigno comes in at one point. Like, he comes in the room, he's like, is this the anger management class? And Stan's like, no, son, that's down the hallway. And he backs out of the room going, pointing at Stan. And then Stan, at the end of it, like, he's teaching everybody how to be a cameo acting. So he puts on like a hat And it's like a general's hat. He's like, this is cameo acting. And then he puts on Thor's helmet. He's like, this is real acting. Really adorable spot and whatnot. Had a blast shooting it with them. But they had this very special moment at the end of the shoot. Spent all day with him, chit-chatting with him. You know, at this point, like Age of Ultron was how many years ago?
8.
No,
14.
3. Probably more like 3. 8? No, it can't be 8.
I mean, Black Panther was February, and so I have no sense of time.
It's true.
That sounds like 1,000 years
Somebody
ago.
look it up. When is it?
3 years ago?
3 years ago.
2015?
2015? That seems like a lifetime
That's
ago,
what
man.
I said.
It seems like an Infinity War ago. Wow. Fucking okay. So this is 3 years ago. So, you know, I've known him for a long fucking time at this point. Like, you know, we put in a bunch of time. At this point, 2 decades we've known each other. So he had a blast. He asked for me specifically to come direct and stuff like that. They came to him, the ad agency, with the Audi spot, and he was just like, why don't you get Kevin Smith? For years, he'd always been like, you got to cast me in something else. And I was like, I cast you in a movie and it died. No. And then later on, when he started making the Marvel movies, he's just like, do you see my box office grosses record is bigger? He goes, it's bigger than Will Smith's now. He's going, because I'm in all these Marvel movies. He's going, you look at the chart, it goes like this, and then it goes down to Mallrats. You ruined my record, Kev.
Low-key shade.
All right, so wait, where was I in that story?
Audi.
So we do this spot, chit-chat with him all day long and stuff. We all take pictures. That's when I'm trying to do Mallrats too, and we all take the picture holding up with 2 fingers and stuff. There's me, Stan, Jay, and Michael Rooker. All 4 of us were in Mallrats and stuff. So at the end of the day, I'm talking to his person. And we did our last shot. Stan was done. We sent him off. But we were doing a shot of Lou Ferrigno walking down the road, and then the car drives past him. And so I'm sitting there chit-chatting. His man came to watch the show. And watch us finish shooting. And he was like, I love watching this stuff. This is fun. I said, your man did great. Stan was wonderful. All day long, he kept his energy up, man. He was funny. I can't believe this guy, he's 92 at that point or something like that. And I was like, he's still raring to go. And his guy goes, you know, he loves you. And I was like, oh, I love him too. And he goes, no, he loves you. He thinks of you like a fucking son. That one was that was a big moment. I went home and I cried to my wife, man. I was like, I never knew that would feel. I didn't know that was missing in my life to hear that. I heard that and I was like, oh my God, I fucking melted. Next time I saw him, I gave him a big hug. What else do I got? He goes, I did this interview with him and his wife. Well, mostly it was him for Legion M. You know, Legion M group. They were responsible for him getting his hands put in in his footprints at the Chinese theater last year, right around this time, if I remember correctly. So Legion M put together this shoot that they asked me to come interview Stan. The idea was we did this VR, virtual reality interview where they shot with these cameras that shoot this insane fucking resolution. They couldn't do playback because they didn't have a monitor to play back the technology they were shooting on because it was too far advanced. Like they were on 10 or 12 fucking K. And they're like, we don't have a monitor to play it back. So we will in 2 years. But they're like, we want to shoot this now because, you know, Stan's getting old. And so we're going to make sure that we capture it. So we did this sit-down interview, and it's in like the room at his house. It's got some great artwork in it and great Marvel pieces. And, you know, it's kind of like an update, a 20-year later version of Marvel's Mutants and Monsters, but it's all fixated on Stan's long life and career, and not just in comics, before he got into comics and everything. And at one point, Joni joins us, his wife. This was, you know, a couple months before she passed on. And she sits down for an interview, little bonus piece that we're going to do. Two things I remember insanely clearly. One, as she sat there doing the interview, Stan sat right off camera in the corner of the room. And he had love on his face, man. Like, he fucking loved that woman. Sat there listening to her interview and had this big fucking smile on his face. Love in his eyes. It was goofy. It was wonderful. I remember that very, very clearly. And then I remember this moment. Doing the interview with Joni and setting her up to tell the story once again about how, you know, she told Stan to, like, go for it. Just write what you want. If you're going to leave that company, write what you want for a change. And he did, and it was the Fantastic Four, and it started all this shit. Began the Big Bang that started the Marvel Universe. So she's about to tell the story, and Joni gets emotional. Her eyes tear up. And I say, "You okay?" And she goes, "It's always Spider-Man, Spider-Man, Spider-Man. They don't know that the man is a poet." And Stan is sitting right over in the corner of the room, and he gets misty. And she starts talking about his writing that he does that nobody ever sees. She's like, no one will ever see the beautiful things that he's written. She knew a different version of the guy. Like, we all appreciate, you know, fucking what he did for us, but they were in a long, long marriage. And they still dug each other right up to the end. When she passed away, like a week later is when we did the Chinese theater ceremony with the footprints. And there was a question as to whether or not he would be up for it at that point. But he showed up and he put on Stan Lee for everybody else. You know, like, I'm sure there's a personal piece of like, oh, right on, I'm going to be immortalized in Groman's, but like, he'd been immortalized 1,000 times over, you know. That was just one more thing, one more feather for the cap. And I'm sure it would have been much more preferable to sit home and just think about his great, great loss. But instead, he put on that fucking sweater, and he put on that character. And Stanley Lieber, who was brokenhearted at the death of his wife, Joni, put on Stan Lee for the rest of us, went out and was there for that ceremony. Man was a true professional. And was always thinking about me and you and everybody in this fucking room, or anybody who could potentially pick up a comic book, or any kid who could be affected by some magical story, some simple parable about somebody making the right choice as opposed to the wrong choice. Guy was a class act all the way. Let's see, what else do I got? He was in Yoga Hosers, but that's best left unsaid. You know what? Fuck it. I am going to say it. Because there's a cute story. There's a clip I got that Chris Drake, the composer on the show, he did Tusk, he did Yoga Hosers as well. He sent me yesterday after Stan passed, and it's a clip of me directing Stan on Yoga Hosers. And it's me going, you know, explaining what a hoser is and blah, blah, blah. But it's come after the first take. And his first take is, you know, pitch perfect. If you've never seen the movie, he's like the dispatch officer that the girls call when all hell is breaking loose at the convenience store. And when they, you know, they tell him some incredible shit about fucking Nazi sausages and shit. And then the line goes dead, and he looks at the phone and he says, "Goddamn yoga hosers," you know, and that's it. First take and stuff, we do that and shit. Gets to that moment, the line goes dead, and he goes, "Goddamn yoga horses," and hangs up the phone. And everybody on camera, like I'm behind the monitor, I see the image shake because everyone's laughing on camera and shit like that. So I go out there and I'm like, "It was beautiful, but it's yoga hosers." And he goes, "Yoga hosers? What the hell is that?" And I was like, "Let me walk you through it." And I explain what it is. He goes, "Yoga hosers, yoga hosers. Okay, I think I got it. Let's go. Yoga hosers. It's your movie. Yoga hosers."
My movies have made $17 billion.
Yeah, and then yoga hosers. I did a pilot for AMC a couple of years ago. Steve Aggie, was on with me as well. He tweeted about it, or he was in the comments section of my Instagram, reminded me. It was called Screenplay, and the idea was you did scenes from movies and stuff. It was kind of fun. They didn't wind up going with it, but they did pick up Geeking Out, which I joined. So we shot the pilot, and at the end, it was kind of like a quasi-game show. Whoever won the Stan Lee Cup, and Stan Lee came out and presented a cup, you know. So we brought him out to do it. Anytime you called him, he came out. Didn't matter what it was for. Like he did, I think twice. He was on Comic Book Men. Came down, sat with us at the table one time. Another time he was just hanging out with the boys in the show. One of my favorite episodes of the show. And one of my favorite images as well. Stan Lee sitting on the counter at the Secret Stash and 4 grown men laying on the floor at his feet like children as he tells them stories and stuff. That's how we all felt when we were around the guy, man. He was a great storyteller and a legend. What else I got, man? IMDb. 2 summers ago, I interviewed him. It's a cute clip. You can find it online. I interviewed him at San Diego Comic-Con, the IMDb boat. And I told him that he had a role in Jay and Silent Bob Reboot. So I was like, well, let's audition you right now. And so we wind up doing this little bit where I give him a line of dialogue to do, and he can't fucking do it without cracking up. And it's adorable. It's a genuine laugh. He's making himself laugh and stuff. It's a really cute clip. You can find it on IMDb. I did an auction with him for FloridaCon. We raised a bunch of money together. I was on stage with him. That seemed like a minute ago. In 2016, the New York Comic Con, I did interviews with Stan and Walt Simonson and Chris Claremont. It was like Marvel Legends panel and stuff, and he was holding court in a great way. His vision was starting to go, and his hearing was getting harder and stuff, but he was still in total Stan mode up on stage. You know, give him that mic, and he's off and running. Then the Chinese Theater Footprint Ceremony, which was like I said, a week after, maybe 2 weeks. I think it was only a week after Joni passed, and he still got up and gave the best Stan Lee possible. Had people get up, give him tributes and stuff. I got to be the MC. That was really sweet and whatnot. And I got to see him put his hands and feet print. Like, I don't live far from that place. I live up in the hills. And when I was a kid, I came out to Hollywood like when I was like 9 with my family. And I was big into this shit, loved movies and whatnot. So, you know, I was like, we gotta go to the Chinese theater because the R2-D2 and C-3PO and Darth Vader, they put their feet in the cement. And so I got a picture of me and my brother sitting in front of those footprints and shit like that. Now I got somebody for real to go visit, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, I knew a guy whose prints are there. And it's kind of comforting now to know that, like, you just stroll down there and fucking hang out and look at him. Like, he's a piece of the town forever. Last time I saw Stan face to face was on his birthday last year. Max, his body man, called me up and said, we're having a 95th birthday party, surprise party for Stan. I said, you sure that's a good fucking idea? The word surprise and 95, these things don't go together. And
Soft surprise.
Yeah, he said, we won't yell loud.
Hey, boo.
So we went to the steakhouse in Beverly Hills and there with a bunch of people. Lou Ferrigno was there as well. And Stan came in and we all softly said, happy birthday. And he was like, I remember his first reaction, he goes, who are these people? And then came in and got his proppers and then sat down at the table and stuff. And I went over and chit-chatted with him for a bit, took pictures. Every time he ever saw me, after he said, hey, Kev, one of the first things he would say is, when we making another movie again? Always. And he asked me that day, and I said, real fucking soon, man, I promise you, like, we're so close. And he said, oh, fantastic. And we took a picture, and then I didn't see him again. Then, a couple months later, I had a heart attack, and the last few months have been kind of about that. And I got a request on Friday. Jordan, who runs our company, Jason's wife, she goes, Stan wants to see you. And I said, what? She goes, they asked if you would come up and see Stan. And it'd been, it was a weird year with Stan. Like, at a certain point, I didn't have his number, couldn't reach out to him, tried. Put up a tweet about, like, you could come live with me and shit like that. Like, so, it was a year fraught with peril for him. Last year of his life was, spent dodging stories and stuff like that. So for a while I couldn't see him, couldn't contact him. And then all of a sudden, here I was being, said he wants to see you. So I said, of course, when? They're like, as soon as possible. They're like, he's good for like 5-7 minutes, but he's asking about you. And so I was like, all right, man, like I'm home all next week. Lock it in. So I was supposed to go see him this week. And then I was walking the dog the other day and I got a call from Jordan and I said, what's up? And she goes, the reporter is announcing that Stan just passed. And that was a tough fucking morning. Like, he was a great man. And, he's fucking 95 and closing in on 96. So he had a legendary life, but, like, it's just weird being in a world where, like, those stories stop. That's it. So I had to write shit down so I didn't forget. You take for granted the time that you have with people, and then one day you realize, shit, you don't get to make any more memories. The amazing thing was I got to make any memories at all. Can't believe I met the man once, let alone could call him friend. That beautiful dude gave me a fucking ring. Could have got married to him.
I mean, today, like a couple of years back, not so much.
Might have been tough, but, we could have made it work. He told weirder stories, Inside it says, to Kevin from Stan Lee. It's got my Fatman logo. It's really sweet. He gave it to me twice, because he forgot he gave it to me the first time. I have 2 rings. Wonderful fucking man. First time I was given that ring was not by Stan Lee himself. It was a con that I went to in Atlantic City, New Jersey. And they said, Stan wants you to go to this con and interview him. I said, oh, okay, all right. Atlantic City, fine. And when I got there, they're like, Stan didn't make it. And I was like, who am I interviewing? They go, a Stan Lee puppet. And I got to tell you, the puppet looked really good, man. Like, I was like, oh shit, they pulled it off. And he gave me that ring because it was from Stan himself. And then the next time I saw Stan, he gave me another copy. And I was like, oh my God, thank you. I didn't want to tell him, like, your puppet gave me one.
I'm already married to your puppet.
It's nuts, though, man. What a special relationship. And I'll cherish it forever, and I will miss him all of my days. This is a dude responsible for a lot of what I do, a lot of what I talk about, a lot of what I believed and proselytized for years and stood behind and was like, this shit matters. It's not just fucking disposable junk culture. Like, it can make you feel, it can make you soar, it can make you want to be something better. Like, this shit's important. And because of that, like, I wound up in that dude's life for a while, man. It's really fucking special. It's weird that it's over. I guess it makes sense. All things come to a close. And, death makes life that much more precious. And fuck, did he have a great run, But still, it sucks. Still, I miss him. Still, it seems fucking unfair. Seemed close to living forever, didn't he? Like, he was just always there, like, and ever living, eternal. Got damn close. And now he is. He is eternal. Name written in the stars and stuff. Like, he'll never be forgotten. You kidding me? They won't remember me. They won't remember a lot of shit, but they'll remember him in like 100, 200, 300 fucking years. We don't know who wrote the Greek myths, but we know who wrote our new mythology. Name's attached to it forever, man. Give it up for the one and only, the sensational Stan Lee. All right, enough about us. Let's open it up to other people, man. Other people gotta have some fucking Stan stories. I can't be the only one and stuff. So JC, find us some eulogizers, some mourners.
Oh shit!
Don't kill us. Uh-oh, we got a taker, man, right up front. JC's working on some shit. He's now gonna give you the mic. Uh-oh, fuck, he ain't giving you that mic yet. Now you're good. What's your name, young camper?
Hi, my name is Ryan.
Ryan?
Yes.
Everyone give it up for Ryan.
Thank you.
What do you got for us, true believer? Well, here's the thing, man. You tell us a good Stan story, you're going to walk away with a prize. Not just like feeling good about sharing, getting some shit off your chest and whatnot. But we're going to give you some tickets. Our good friend Deacon and the good folks at 40X are always giving us tickets that we like to give out here. If you've never seen a movie in 40X, oh my God, you haven't fucking lived. It is fantastic. You can go see The Grinch right now, as directed by Smodcast's own Scott fucking Mosier. It was the number one movie this weekend. Made fucking more money in one weekend than all of our movies together put together. Like, fantastic. So you can go check out The Grinch in the 40X theater. You can check out anything you want. So if you tell a good enough Stan story, you're going to get that. And we're also going to give you a signed print from our very own Dark Knight Returns, Nate Gonzalez, man. This is a Fatman on Batman print.
Fatman Beyond.
Sorry, Fatman Beyond print. I always forget.
Stay on brand.
Signed by Marc and I think me.
I will have to sign that then.
You will have to sign it. Okay.
And then
You'll get one of those. And if you don't get one, you could buy one on your way out. Nate's selling them, man. So you'll get one of those. And what's this? Oh my God, you're getting prizes galore, man.
Whoa.
What is it?
Whoa.
Oh, that's beautiful. Oh, this is from the thing. After party to follow, Stark Mansion. What the fuck? I wasn't invited to an after party. This is Legion M put this together. What a gorgeous poster celebrating Stan's imprint ceremony. No. What?
Yeah. Were you at the stank party?
Join with fans. Imprint ceremony. Celebrate our hero. Is that when we did it? Yeah. Was in July? Yes. Of this year? 2017. Fuck. Wow. Yes, because wait. Black Panther hadn't come out yet, but Chadwick Boseman was there, but he had played Black Panther. Because I referred to him as just like his lordship or something. Wow. Fucking. Now, thank you for placing it for me. 2017. Okay, so you're going to get, how many posters we got? Three. All right. So, wow, you're getting a package, man. You're going to get tickets. You're going to get a Fatman Beyond print by Nate, and you're going to get one of these Legion M stand posters. You better have a fucking story.
Oh, I do.
All right, hit us.
My very first convention was in WonderCon in 2005, and I got to ask you a question. You told a story about writing Superman on a plane, and then you faxed blank pages. So shortly after that, my very first San Diego Comic-Con was in 2005, and I got to ask Stanley two questions. And the first one was about his monologue in Mallrats. And he said, I asked if it was true, and he said, you see, in motion pictures, they have what you call a script. And boy, did Joni, my wife, give me a hard time. Like, who is this woman? Who is this girl that you couldn't get over? And who is she? She was really mad. And he told her, well, you see, in motion pictures, they have what you call a script. And so he told me, well, it wasn't true, because no girl would ever turn me down. And my other question was about how he felt about the changes they made in the movies. And he said it was all about the spirit. You know, it would have been corny if, you know, the X-Men costumes were colorful. It would have been corny if Hulk was like, Hulk smash. And, you know, with Spider-Man, he made him, he hadn't been by a radioactive spider, but to update it, they had him bitten by a genetically altered spider. So he approved the changes as long as it pertained to the spirit of his works. So that's my Stan Lee story.
It's a great Stan Lee story. Give it up for him. You're going to walk away with some shit. Take this, and take this. All you. Well done. Who's next, man? Fix us up, JC. JC, once again, for those watching at home, the proprietor of this here fine establishment, Scum and Villainy Cantina. What's your name, young camper?
Leon.
Leon? Everyone
Yeah.
give it up for Leon.
You don't run into that many Leons anymore, man. Good for you.
There's not many of us.
No.
Yeah.
You're the king of Leons.
I wish. Should have cashed in.
And like white Leons are like white tigers.
Yeah, especially short ones.
You're an
There's not
endangered
many of
species,
us.
brother.
Thank you. I had the chance, so growing up, reading comic books like everyone here, one of the first books that I read that ever got me really interested in comics was How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way.
Oh, what a great book.
Such an amazing book.
Can you draw?
I can't draw for
Me
shit.
neither, because I had that book and I was like, no!
So that's my story. So when I was at New York City Comic Con and met Stan Lee to get an autograph and said, one of the things that got me excited about writing and doing stuff was How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way. And he goes, oh, that's great. And he goes to sign my thing. He goes, that's an art book, right? That's about drawing. And I was like, yeah, I can't draw. And he goes, there's a lot of competition I should introduce you to. And that was my moment of meeting Stan Lee and having him try to pawn me off to DC or somebody else at that time.
Awesome story,
Yeah.
man. Give it up for him. That's a great fucking Stan story. Hold on, take a poster.
Cool. Thank you.
Who's next? Who wants a chance to win some booty? What's your name?
How's it going? My name's Greg.
Greg?
Greg.
Everyone give it up for Greg.
Maybe you and Leon should see about switching names. I'm just saying.
Yes.
You can sign it over. It's
And
easy.
also good to see you again, Mark.
Absolutely.
Well, I was actually, I had a really good time with Stan one time. It was over New York Comic Con. It was a while back. It was one of many times it was said, it's the last time you're going to see Stan Lee or anything like that. Reed Pop promoted him like that heavily. I was going through a thing where I'm a software engineer, but I was like trying to write for a while. Nothing took off. And, I was still in a stage where I was like kind of like shaking whenever you talk to a celebrity, like, hey, Stan Lee. Like I was wondering, where do you...
I knew him
like,
23 years. I was still that way. I was
Yeah.
like, hey. He called me Shaky Bob. I will say this. He always remembered my name. Jason Mewes, not so much. So he'd always be like, hey, Kev, hey, you. Be like, Jason. He'd be like, that's right, Jason. And then Jason directed a movie called Madness in the Method. And Stan did a cameo for him. And Jason cried on set the day that he directed Stan Lee. Like, it's sincere crying because he was just like, I never imagined that like I would do anything with Stan Lee. I was like, you were in a fucking movie with him, man. And he goes, yeah, that was your movie. This is my movie. Really beautiful. Back to you.
Yeah. But yeah, I was asking him basically about something I was writing at the time. I won't do a Stan Lee impression. I'm terrible at it. And let's
Do it,
about
man.
respecting the man tonight.
Own it. Rock it. Try. I did
And,
it.
I was like, what exactly do you find it hits the core of all of these characters and makes them last so long and everything like that? And he takes a moment. And he's like, hope. Hope is the main thread that I have through everything. All these characters are looking towards the future, and it just took me a moment, and I took a step back, and I was like, yeah. And so like walking around a convention, I'm just thinking about that, hope is where I'm missing, and a good chunk of my story and everything like that. So I'm like still thinking about it, and I'm walking past the booth, and like someone says something to him, and he's like, hope. Hope is the main thread. I'm like, okay, so I learned three things from that incident. One, Stan Lee works. he is a man where once you've already established, he repeats a lot of things and everything that. But it's the thought that he was also such a heavily like a marketer. And he was doing it to the point where he actually like studied before meetings, where it would be like a book that he wasn't even writing on. He's like, what is a Moon Knight? And so he would like go ahead and like research everything and then set it on the course for where it needed to go. Second thing was, because of that, I was just like, I want to, like, he was like already, he was about 92 at that time. And I was just like, I just want to be there. I want to be with that same energy and with that same level of like work aptitude that he's working at on that level. And much like you, like within the past month, I'm like, I want to go vegan. I want to live forever with that same kind of energy. And like, so that was huge. And the third thing was, yeah, he was right. Like Marc knows, I ended up writing on like American Gods, and like I'm doing like just more stuff now. But the one thing I have with everything is just that, like, I know this is a wrong podcast to say this on, where it's like I'm more of a Superman guy than a Batman guy.
Get the fuck out!
Your Stan Lee story is quaint. Out!
Where Batman is on top of a building and he looks down at Gotham, Superman is on a building almost parallel in Metropolis, and he looks up. And a lot of the characters that he created while he was making them, they looked up. They looked at the future. They looked at hope, and they represent that and like that same level. And I think, I don't know, as creators, we can carry on that legacy of just hope and looking
it's
up.
true, because that's something we can all identify with too. You can't identify with getting bitten by a radioactive spider. I don't even think I've ever been bitten by a non-radioactive spider and shit. So we can't identify with like the big strokes that make the characters so memorable. But what you can identify with is like, you know, something like that. Like, hey man, I like those characters. I have hope. I have that. Like, you know, the idealism of a young Peter Parker is something some of us still carry later on in life, you know, at age fucking 48 and stuff. Clearly past midlife and stuff, but still hope, you know, kind of keeps it going. It's an excellent point. It's a great story. Give him some fucking tickets, man. He won.
We got a poster and another poster.
Pleasure. JC, what do you got for us, man? Hey, what's your name?
I'm Sean.
Sean, everyone give it up for Sean. Sean, tell us a Stan Lee story.
So I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Ah!
And unfortunately, I missed you during Dogma. I kicked myself for it later, of course.
I kick myself for Dogma all the time. When I was almost going to die, I was like, I'm going to hell because of Dogma.
So, you know, like most of us here, I made my journey across the country as we made journeys here tonight to talk about Stan and to chase those parts of ourselves that we kind of hope existed. So I kept missing Stan throughout the years, and I finally made it to a con that Stan would be at. Last year, Silicon Valley Comic-Con. I have 2 children, and they both have autism. And so I tried taking them to a previous con, and they kind of weren't able to connect to my life, you know, the problems they would face. And so this year, whenever Stan was announced, I was like, you know, I'd love to take them, but I just can't, you know. And at the last minute, a friend was able to come through and bring them in just for a photo shoot we had with them, you know. And my youngest is 4, and he's, you know, dressed in his little Hulk outfit, and he speaks no words. And so we came in, you know, to take a picture with him, and I knelt down to him. I said, "Hey, say hi, Hulk. You know, just say hi." And he, you know, I gave it a few shots because you're not trying to take your time, and I heard "Hi, Hulk," and I hope beyond hope that it was my son. And I was like, "Wait a minute, who said that?" And I turned around, and it was Stan. And it was at the time where he wasn't really saying much during that con. Like everyone was talking about it, and like it felt the same as if my son had said it, you know, because it was like that same connection. And I was really grateful to have that moment.
Fucking beautiful. Give it up. That's a fantastic story. Of course you get fucking tickets. Of course you get a poster. That fucking rocked. Well done, man. That's what we're talking about. Everybody got a Stan Lee story, man. Even the people that don't meet him got a Stan Lee story. What do you got for us? What's your name?
Damien.
Everyone give it up for Damien.
Hey.
So I've been very lucky to have met and worked with Stan several times through my short trip around this world compared to him. Seen him at many conventions and God, how many TV shows, movies that he's been in. Moved out to Hollywood because I wanted to work in movies and make the superhero films that everybody else is not making, and got a job. First, I came out here during Hurricane Katrina, and literally driving through the wreckage and the horror of all that. I get a job at CAA, talent agency here in town. And first week I'm there, I get a call from somebody upstairs in the offices and the partners. They go, get that Damien kid up to the big conference room. And I'm like, well, what the hell did I do? And they're like, Stan Lee's coming. We need you to entertain him. And I was like, what?
You're like, Hollywood is good.
Yeah. It's like, what? I'm like, you've got no other nerds in the building? And so I get up there and I'm like, how long do I have to talk to him for? And they go, about 30 minutes. The boss is late. It's like, what the hell am I going to talk to Stan Lee? Oh, I know, comics. And I was like, but he probably always hears about that. So I went in and just, how you doing? I'm Damien. I love comics. I love what you've done. Tell me, let's talk about life. And he asked me where I've been, where I've come from, what I'm doing, and everything. And Gil, his partner at the time, was like, oh, Jesus, not another one of these geeks. And so Stan, he gets my life story, and we talk a little bit, and 30 minutes go by, and he goes, you know what, Damien? He goes, take away from this what you will. He goes, and I'm glad you read my stuff, and I know, he goes, but just be a good person, and he goes, that if you want it, go for it. He goes, otherwise it's never gonna happen. He goes, you have to go for it. And I was like, all right, that's amazing. And I said, thank you so much. He goes, it was a pleasure to have you. So the next day I'm sent to Robert Downey Jr.'s trailer filming Iron Man to drop off a statue that I happened to get just because I just happened to know somebody at Sideshow Collectibles. And
How do I get your fucking job, man? Like, I would do that job. I'd be that person if they're like, you get to meet Robert Downey Jr.
But again, it's putting myself where I needed to be and being good to people and following what he said. And from the takeaway was just be a good person, be you, be yourself, and get out there and good things will happen. And then, next thing I know, I'm in Jersey going through your warehouses selling your stuff for auction.
Oh, you were part of the auction, man. PropWorks.
So I did PropWorks, and I got to work with Wizard World, and then next thing I know, I'm directing Stan on camera and doing all this stuff with all the celebrities and whatnot. And then the next thing I know, I'm working with Legion M, and we're putting together the handprint ceremony for Stan Lee. And it's just one of those.
Now we're putting together the handprint ceremony.
We put it together.
This is the man asked.
Sorry.
The Chinese theater if Stan had his hands in the.
You're responsible for Stan getting his fucking hands in the feet. God damn it, give it up for Damien. All for you, Damien.
But again, and it's just crazy. It's what Stan said. It's be a good person. That's what my takeaway from him and his life is. It's learn to be the best person you can. There's no reason to step on anybody else. Emulate the heroes who you love. Be the person that you know you can be. Live your life. Have fun. Enjoy it. And good things will happen. Crappy things happen too. But you take them good and bad. Stan had a world of crap things happen. Yeah. But he always took the best of it. And he always made it better. And that's what I've always learned from all the fun things and being able to. And when we were sitting in the office at the TCL, I was looking around, I'm seeing pictures of all these celebrities around the world. And I was like, my celebrity's not here. My hero, why isn't his hands in there? And they're like, oh my God, they aren't. And I was like, I can make a few calls.
You fucking did the Lord's work in doing that, man.
But it wasn't about me. It was about him, and that's thank you. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate everybody doing the hands, but it's not about me. It's about sharing that experience. It was thanking him for all the love that he gave to us,
which is amazing. But again, like you made it happen. Like otherwise,
with the help of other people. Yes, I'm not taking credit.
Absolutely, but somebody
I just happened to
instigated.
Yeah.
Somebody had the good idea.
Thank you. Long story short, be good people. Love everyone around you, do kind things, and emulate the heroes that this man wrote. And that's the best in all we can do.
Fucking amen.
Thank you.
Damien definitely wins, man. Damien, take tickets, take a poster. No, you're good? So we can do one more? Shit, you won without playing. Give it up. She won. What's your name, young camper? I don't think we have shit to give away, but
I'm probably not going to get anything because unfortunately I'll probably be the first un-Stan Lee story of the night.
okay.
In fact, you are my Stan Lee. As you've been saying through the night, I grew up. I was born in '89. Sorry, James. My friends call me Chuck.
Everyone give it up for what? Chunk?
Chuck.
Chuck. Wait, you're James, but they call you Chuck?
You can't choose your nicknames.
Very true. Give it up for Chuck.
What did you do, Chuck, to get to be a Chuck?
When I fought, I used to cut the Chuck Liddell haircut in, and I'd come back after the weekends, and everyone was like, "What's that for?" Chuck Liddell was my favorite fighter. Chuck stuck. Chuck stuck. So, but you've been saying through the night, like, I grew up in '89, so I grew up in the era of animation, not comic books. I wasn't ADHD, so I'm more like, oh, butterflies, than sit still and read. As much as pictures
So
were
what, like
fun to me.
X-Men cartoons? Or?
Yeah, X-Men cartoons, grew up with Spider-Man, grew up with all that. But the first time I was introduced to Stan Lee was Mallrats. I didn't understand who created all this. I used to jump on my trampoline for 3 hours pretending to be the Spider-Man. Whip and whip. But the first time I realised who made all that was due to you. And I grew up, I don't know if you can tell by the jumper I'm wearing, but 6 months ago, I don't know if anyone knows, but Kevin Smith had a heart attack.
Yeah. I've kept it quiet. What? Don't fucking tell.
You buried the lead, motherfucker.
I'm just trying not to tell you.
But because of that, like I'd written into Hollywood Babylon, like big fan, and he was like, oh, maybe next year, but then you had the heart attack, and I'm like, I ain't waiting for that. So I did a Clerks. I sold half my stuff, hit up everyone who owed me 2 cents, so did an extra 12 hours a week, and I've come from Brisbane, Australia, to be here. And as much as Stan Lee is an awesome man, I feel like he stole the thunder, and I'm a bit of a dick to be doing this.
Not at
and
all.
I'm not going to be getting anything to win, but I've had a question. A movie used to last 90 minutes for me. Beginning to end, done, I'd go on with my day.
Right.
And then I watched Jay and Silent Bob, and that became my favourite movie of all time. Within a month or two, I knew it word for word, beginning to end. I could do half the euphemisms and like accents and impersonations. And then a year and a half later, my friend was like, I told him how much I loved it. He was like, oh, I know, Clerks, my favourite. I'm like, what's Clerks? And then that started, as far as I was aware, you were the first person to create a movie universe. I learned previously and after that, it was like the monster movie universe and stuff and so on and forth.
Right.
But I'd always wondered, was that something you'd done by purpose? And in the sense of winning things, I tailored it to Marc in the same sense. So the question I was going to ask was one, was it always, because before that it was like sequels and prequels, it was like a one story arc. But then I watched Jay and Silent Bob, and then I watched Clerks, and half an hour into it, here's Jay and Silent Bob. So it's a story outside a main arc. I'd always wondered, was that your main purpose to create, like, once you've done Clerks, where you're like, I'm going to keep going, not following my story, like you said, 10 years later, Clerks 2, where it was. But it was like, those fellas that were hanging outside the store? Did you ever wonder what happened to them? That's what I'd always thought outside of a movie. You made movies last longer than the 90 minutes they ran for me. You're the reason I'm a cinephile.
Right on.
It sounds dirtier than I wanted it to sound.
Yes, it's filthy. I got a little hard when you said it. I was like, yeah, let's cinephile, yeah.
So I'm not going to win nothing, but Marc has had one thing to say all night because he met him once. Exactly right. So I'd like to ask a question. If you had to put, and I was happy enough to meet Jay, and he answered the same question, but it was, if you had to put Silent Bob into any other universe other than the Viewer's universe, who would you put it in and why? And Marc, we live in the reality, and you obviously, as far as I'm aware, don't have a movie character. So if you had to put yourself into any other movie universe, why?
Ooh.
You want me to
Pair
go
of
first?
You go first. You go first. Let me
Silent Bob, I put him into the universe of A Quiet Place.
Easy casting.
He'd be in every sequel. He is an expert at not being detected. He's very quiet. I've thought about this a lot.
Yeah?
I'm just waiting for John Krasinski to give me the call. I'll be like, I'll be right there.
I don't think I've ever heard the question, but you've been waiting for it, have you?
I have been.
I always thought the John Hughes universe, I don't know why, but I could see you sitting on the corner and be like, did you see which way she went? I'm trying to catch her before she got on a plane.
Yes. Yeah. But let's be honest, that Quiet Place, that made a lot of money.
That's all you.
So,
that's your bread and butter.
yes, that'd be mine. What about you?
If I got to put myself in any movie universe,
Yeah.
Shaft.
Well, that's one
I mean,
smooth
Which
mother.
one? Which one? The old Shaft or the remake Shaft?
Yeah,
Talk about Shaft.
It's all the same universe, right?
Yeah.
So just any fucking Shaft will do. Maybe Shaft goes to Africa. I don't know. It sounds like the travelogue is in it to win it, but yeah, I would like to be a sex machine with all the chicks. It doesn't happen often, but yes, I will take the opportunity.
Thank you both so much. And
But wait, let me go back to your other question because it comes back to Stan in some way. The reason that I connected all the movies is because of comics, because of Stan, because in New York, like Iron Man knew Spider-Man, and fucking they knew the Avengers, and they knew the Fantastic Four. It was all connected. So, I definitely owe a bit to John Hughes, of course. All of his movies were also connected. They didn't cross over, but they were all. Most of them took place in Shermer, Illinois. So it was and also John Landis deserves a little credit, particularly for the cinematic inspiration of it, because I remember going to see Coming to America, and at one point, like Akeem winds up giving money to Mortimer and Randolph, the two dudes who were in Trading Places with fucking Eddie Murphy, and I remember sitting in the audience being like, "Holy shit, they're connected!"
that's how I felt with James on Bond and Clerks.
That's why somebody gave it to me, so I passed it on my movies. But building the universe, I took straight from comics. So I've seen a lot of people over the years going, Kevin Smith did fucking cinematic universe before Marvel, but Kevin Smith stole it from Marvel in the first place. So technically, they did it first.
Vicious circle.
Yes.
On that note, I'd also, because I don't have a photo of Stan Lee and now I never will have the opportunity.
We will take a picture after the show.
If I could get a photo leaning on something with you, I would be more than happy.
We've got an alley just for leaning.
I am not worthy. I am not worthy.
Excellent question. Give it up for him, man. It was fantastic. We got no prizes, but we'll definitely take one more, man.
I will keep it quick, sorry.
No worries.
Hey, Kev, thank you. It's Tom DeSanto.
Hey!
Fellow
Oh my God!
Jersey
Give it up
boy.
for fucking Tom, man!
And
Tom,
those you
hold
don't
on. For those that don't fucking know, Tom is responsible for giving you the comic book movies, man, that before you had fucking Marvel movies. You had Marvel movies. Tom is responsible
Which
for
was
fucking
X-Men,
X-Men
yeah.
movies.
That
Give
was
it up for
a
Tom,
movie I wanted
man.
to do.
One of the greatest comic book movies ever fucking made, still to this day, is X2.
So, yes, and, thank you for having this here tonight because I think all of us were feeling a little bit alone and missing Stan.
Agreed.
And it gave us a little bit of community here. And, look around and into the eyes of the person next to you, and Stan lives in that person because he made each of us a better soul. And that was something that I felt as a recovering Catholic as well from New Jersey.
We're in a very small fraternity.
It is a very, unfortunately, large fraternity, I think. The first time I met Stan was July of '96, where I got to pitch X-Men 1 to him. That'll be a whole another story. But I want to tell the story of Stan Lee's first cameo, which was in X-Men 1.
What was that? Was he on the beach? No, where is he?
He was on the beach.
Yes.
So we were, and this was when Marvel and Stan were sort of at odds. So we were
for those
told
that-
not to talk to Stan Lee.
For those that don't remember historical context, there was a moment where Stan wound up suing Marvel. This is long before Marvel was owned by Disney and whatnot. It was compared by most people to Colonel Sanders suing Kentucky Fried Chicken.
It definitely was, and my heart was always with the Colonel. So we were trying to convince Stan to come up to Toronto because we were shooting X-Men 1 there, and he was being kind of resistant. I think because of the bad blood that was going on. And I was talking with John over in his office, and I got Stan on the phone, and Stan goes, "Tom, I can't go up to Canada." And I'm like, "Stan, why can't you come up?" He's like, "Because I don't know if they'll let me back in the country." And I said, "I think you're just making excuses because of the lawsuit." And he's like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Marvel doesn't want me there." And I said, "Stan, you are Marvel. You need to be in this movie." So we couldn't convince him to go to Canada, but we had 2 days shooting over in Paradise Cove, over in Malibu, where Senator Kelly comes out. and we convinced Stan to come out for his cameo. So it is like Jesus coming to set, and everyone is there to see Stan Lee. And he looks at the script, and he goes, you know, I come all the way out here, and you guys can't write me one line? And I said, Stan, there's no lines in the script. And he's like, all right, I'll do it, but it's the last one I'm doing without a line. So Stan did his cameo, and we finished up the day, and he was gracious enough to sit back and take pictures with every extra that came up, every person. So to wrap it up, that was the type of guy Stan was. He never said no. He made you feel like you were 8 years old again. And that first time an adult treats you like an adult when you're 8, that was how you felt around Stan. He was the ultimate gentleman, and he made us each better souls. And thank you again for hosting tonight, and thank you all for being here, because it made me feel a little bit less alone.
Fucking A. Give it up for Tom. You know, the Stan, a lot of people say he cameoed in Mallrats. It really wasn't a cameo. It was
a role.
It was a role. And he always felt that as well. But without, like, that, X-Men is the first cameo, I believe, of, like, the run that, like, think about it. You don't think of a Marvel movie without that happening. But originally it happened in the X-Men movies and started, and every time a Marvel movie happened, it was like Stan was a part of it.
Yeah, he wasn't in Blade.
That's right. Was he in any of the other Blades? Like 2 or 3?
I don't believe he was, no.
Never popped up in Blade.
He might have been in Blade 3, which was after X-Men. So maybe there was, we should maybe put Stan in this, but he wasn't in the first one.
I was going to say maybe he had a thing about R-rated movies, but he was in fucking Deadpool. And he was in fucking Mallrats. So yeah. Wow, that's weird, man. But yeah, without Tom, maybe we don't get that fucking run of cameos. Give it up for Tom, man. Well
Thanks,
done.
Tom.
You know, the man wrote it, and we all know it. With great power comes great responsibility. Stan Lee had great power, and he used it very responsibly over the course of his lifetime. Made a lot of us dreamers, made a lot of us true believers. Was the first true believer and the first person to wave the flag for this shit, say it was important. And yeah, sure, on some level it was important because it was a bottom line for a business that he was in. But you can't fucking back something that hard unless you believe in it a little bit. He believed in what they were doing. He just didn't believe that it was all that important. It took generations and it took billions of dollars at moving the box office to finally convince him, like, yeah, oh God, it was important. And, you know, Stan has a quote, I'm not going to do it justice, but he's talked about, like, you know, I used to be embarrassed about being a comic book writer. You know, I wasn't a doctor, I wasn't building buildings, I wrote comic books. He's like, and then one day I realized that entertainment was important. Sometimes it's all somebody has from keeping from going crazy and whatnot. So I started to, you know, tell people, no, I write comic books. He was the one who went out there first to be like, this shit's cool and I'm an adult saying it. He didn't talk down to his audience. He didn't, when he was out there talking about comics in the world, he wasn't dismissive like, these are read by people in their parents' basements or anything like that. No, man, he made you feel like you were part of something, like you said. He branded. He made it tribal. He was like, you're with Marvel or you're not? Like, it was something to be a part of. You know, gave you shorthand. Now kids don't have it so much in this world, right? But we had shorthand back in the day. Because you knew if you liked somebody, if they liked what you liked, and if they liked Marvel, if they knew who Stan Lee was, you knew you could hang with that fucking person.
And he stood for things. Like he stood in a time when people didn't often, in letter columns, railing against racism, railing against fascism, railing against, you know, homophobia and bigotry and all of that shit. Like he would go out and say, if you like Marvel Comics, you're not that kind of person. Because we don't believe that here. He went against the Comics Code. There was a time when the Comics Code of America said you have to abide by certain rules and laws we have, and we don't want drug use in our comics because we believe that children read them and we don't want to influence them in a bad way. And the Comics Code didn't want them to do that. They were going to withhold their approval. And he said, I want to do this 3-issue run in Spider-Man where somebody ODs, and I think it's important. And the code wouldn't certify. I said, fuck the code. And he published them anyway. And it became this sort of, this flag in the ground of, here are the things that I believe in. Here's the things that I and this company will stand for. And in a time when nobody else was doing that, in a time when it cost him money to do that. It was like, here's what I believe in. And doing so changed the world. Like, we live in a fundamentally Stan Lee world. And without him, it wouldn't be the same world we have. For good or bad, way less bad than there is good. But without him, we don't have this world today.
Yeah, give that up, man. Well, it was Steve Jobs' big quote, right? He would put a dent in the universe, make a dent in the universe. Stan did him way better than that. Stan created a universe and left it behind for all of us to enjoy, for some very lucky few to play in. We talk about the movies a lot, but hey, man, it all starts right here on the fucking page. I was lucky enough to get to play with his fucking characters. I did Daredevil with Quesada and Jimmy Palmiotti, Joe Quesada and Jimmy Palmiotti, and made me contemporaries with Stan. We got to go to events with Stan and fucking, stand shoulder to shoulder with a guy who was vouching for us as the next generation of comics and whatnot. To say he was great is an understatement. To say he was spectacular, sensational, marvelous.
Uncanny.
Incredible, fantastic, amazing, ultimate. True believer. What? Yes. 2099. Let's leave that off.
New universe.
He was, that one still stings. He was all that and so much more. It's weird, when people die, you tend to say stuff like this, but fuck, I don't think I've ever meant it as much as I mean it now. We will never see his like again in this lifetime. Maybe somewhere right now, somebody who can come close to Stan Lee's legacy is being born, but we won't see that person flourish into what he became. We were very lucky to be born in the second half of his life. To see all that, to be there and reap the benefits of everything that he sowed and put together and whatnot.
Yeah, but culture was wet clay when he got there. And at this point, it's hardened a bit. And the chance to get in there and get your fucking hands dirty and shape it into a thing that you want it to be, that only you can see. Like, those times are long gone. Like, there's nothing left to discover on Earth in the same way that there's nothing left new under the sun when it comes to culture, in a very real way. And he was there when you still could.
He built it. He's one of the forefathers of pop culture, for heaven's sakes. And that's the culture that dominates more now than anything else. You got something?
Yeah, I got something.
Let's give you a mic, man. We need a mic. Hold on, it's coming on back. JC's got a mic. What's your name, young camper?
Will.
Everyone give it up for Will.
Thanks. You remember watching the Spider-Man cartoons every Saturday morning? And
Amazing
you heard
Spider-Man and Friends?
Yeah.
With Firestar and Iceman?
Yeah, and Stan.
And Aunt May didn't realize that they were all fucking living there and being heroes at the same time.
Every
But he
Saturday
was the narrator.
morning.
He was, hello, Spider Friends, this is Stan Lee.
Yeah, and he would introduce into the commercials. He'd be like, "We'll be right back after these messages."
Yes.
One day I was in the Starbucks in Beverly Hills, and I had an office over near Wilshire.
Uh-oh. Hold on. Here comes the spare.
This was made in China. Anyway.
There you go.
It's on.
It's on.
It's on. Hello? Okay. So anyway, I was standing in line ordering, and I heard behind me. I said, I heard someone back there talking like that, and he was on his cell phone. He was, "Yeah, I'll be right back." Blah 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 blah. And he said, "Okay, true believer, talk to you later." I turned around, and it was Stan, and I remembered, it's like a light bulb that turned on inside your head. So I just started talking to him. Next thing I know, I'm up in his office around the corner, and I told him, I said, they waited until Jim Henson died to make a documentary on him, and they waited till a lot of creators die, and they don't really have a say when the documentary is made. So I talked them into doing a documentary on him. So that's With Great Power, the Stan Lee story.
Yeah, With Great Power.
You were in, and I don't know if you ever got a DVD for you.
You got a copy?
Yeah, just.
I remember this.
In a couple years.
With Great Power, the Stan Lee story, man.
We met you at the UCLA event. That's when we started shooting.
Yes, that's right. I
talked
remember
about
in
with
the
Joe
after
Quesada.
party afterwards, I think is when I did an interview and stuff.
Anyway,
Did it air on Epix? I see the Epix logo. Is that where it went?
Epix picked it up for 3 years, and
Fucking
Netflix
A,
picked
man.
it up for a few years. But I don't want to self-plug it, but it was.
I will plug it for you. With Great Power, the Stan Lee story, man. Can they find it on Amazon?
Yeah, it's on Amazon and Vudu. And just building on what you were saying earlier about Stan always giving people a chance, and from the moment that dialogue started, he was just totally open to it and sitting there.
And you were just a guy he met at Starbucks.
Just some random guy at Starbucks. And it just showed you, like, I was walking distance from his office, so it kind of grew out of that. And it took about 5 or 6 years working on it, but that was. Oh, thanks. That was a great way to walk into his life and just meet everybody. Hanging out Sunday afternoons up at the house with his wife, and they were telling the old stories from New York, and that hungry time, I guess you could say, that he came out here, and it wasn't easy. It seems easy now, but there was decades where he was trying to get things going.
He came out with the idea, I'm going to go out to Hollywood and we're going to sell Marvel, because they've been doing cartoons. They've done The Incredible Hulk and stuff, I think. I don't even know if that has started yet. But he came out, and I think they live in the same house that they bought when they first came out here and stuff.
They got a
when
good deal on it
passed.
back then, I'm sure.
And wound up living next to Leonardo DiCaprio.
Right.
Stan would always tell a story about one day we were pulling out, and this kid came running up to my car and said, "I want to play you in a movie." And I said, "Okay, true believer." And then Max told me it was Leonardo DiCaprio. Go figure. So
I think it was down the street.
Down
from
the
him,
street, man.
No, but he was just one of those guys that you could open doors for you and just get you to think on a higher level. So I always,
And if you say the right things, he'll make a movie with you. Apparently, is that guy?
Yeah. Well, I was pushing for that before. I actually hope to make a feature one day of him,
of his life,
to tell that story.
It's got to be in the offing, at this point. I mean, even while he was still here, it was something that would be talked about. At one point, people were like, "Ooh, it should be Bryan Cranston. He'd be amazing Stan later in his life." Yes, of course. I hope to God there's a Stan biopic. At one point, somebody was floating the notion of doing a Mad Men type series, but set at Marvel, the Bullpen or something like that. I was like, oh my God, I'd watch the fuck out of that, man. Every week they're creating a new fucking legendary character, and we get to see the behind the scenes and shit. So I'd be all for it. I'll watch anything they want to do about Stan's life. Hopefully they do it justice.
When the Nicholas Hammond version of Spider-Man, and then the Lou Ferrigno Hulk, and in that time things would, it seemed like, come together and then fall apart, and then he'd just keep trying, and so that ongoing charging kind of.
It took him 30 years of selling his wares out here, and then they'd get some traction, but nothing like it is now. And then one day, everybody just realized, oh shit, these would make great fucking movies. Came at the right time when you can pull off the effects, you can make Iron Man look like it's real, you could pull off the Hulk so it wasn't just a guy painted green. You could expand and kind of bring, for the first time, technology matched the imaginations of a bunch of guys from the 60s.
That's right.
And bang, suddenly it's happening. But I would watch a movie or about his life. I'm looking forward to watching this, man. I remember when this was going on. Give it up for him, man. He put Stan's life on film.
Can I say one last thing?
Absolutely.
I've been watching Facebook the last couple of days, and a lot of people from those years that the cast and crew from that experience, they've expressed a lot of loss and mourning, and I just wanted to say something to recognize that because they had a lifetime of experience, just meeting and knowing Stan for that small time.
The people on the movie?
Yeah, the people that either we got some of the cast back here. We got Nikki, who is also one of the co-director producers, and there was hundreds of people all over the course of it. I've heard, I think, everything in the last few days.
I myself have received texts as if the volume of texts I received when, I didn't have a phone back then. This is the most text I've ever received about a death since I've been receiving texts.
Yeah.
But to be fair, not a lot of people have died since I've been receiving texts. Like my dad died before texts were popular. But this is the most that people have reached out to me about somebody's death since my own father's death. And that's very telling. Fucking people I haven't spoken to in years are when I saw that Stan Lee died, the first person I thought of was you or something, which was very sweet, very touching. But for some people, they just, they're like, that's how I know him, because of you. I didn't know who he was until he made that movie and stuff. And then some people knew that, I looked up to him, that I tried to be like him, a carnival barker, like the salesman. I'm a salesman at heart, and I'm fucking selling Kevin Smith. I'm in the Kevin Smith business. He was in the Marvel business.
Yeah.
But, he believed it. He sold with sincerity. He wasn't like a used car salesman or something like that. He believed in his product. But at the end of the day, he was always selling something. But he did it with such class, and he treated every potential customer or every past customer as if the fucking sun was shining on him in that moment. They got all his fucking attention. And I've tried to emulate that my entire career, because he was so fucking good at it. He was so wonderful with a crowd. We could all hope to Christ we age as well as Stan did. I think that had a lot to do with living out here. I think if he had stayed in New York all this time, I don't think he would have made it to nearly 96. But he benefited from moving out here. Both him and Joni. Joni lived a long time as well.
Yeah, I thought he was going to be like Gandalf and live to 112 or
exactly,
something.
Man. Honestly, there were days where I'm like, I remember on Mallrats, they were like, be careful, he's 73. If only we'd known that, you got time. He's going to be here forever. And it made you think that he would be there even longer. I honestly, look, I almost fucking died before Stan. And that would have made more sense to me than the world that we're in now, where I'm here and he's not. A, it don't make sense. B, it's certainly not fucking fair. Life should be a meritocracy. And if you create as much as he did, you should fucking live forever, and I guess he will.
Yeah.
Just not physically, yeah. Shall we head off into that good night?
I think we shall.
None of us want to leave because we all warmed by the fucking familiarity we all share, the feeling we have right now for the guy that we all loved and will continue to love. He'll be with us like the Force, always. And in the words of a really great guy who was really fucking talented and really appreciated everything that came his way in life, let's end the way that he would always like to end things. Enough said. And Excelsior, you're right.
And Excelsior.
That is Fatman on Fatman Beyond.
Well done.
For this week, man. I'm Kevin. Wait, even though that ain't it. Did you all enjoy yourselves, ladies and gentlemen?
Do y'all feel a little bit better? A little bit better.
Weird question to ask at the end of a wake or a eulogy, but yes. We did all enjoy ourselves, man. There ain't no show without the guy standing to my right. Give it up for marvelous Marc Bernardin. And that is Fatman on Batman for this. No, fuck. God damn it. Damn it. That is
Yoga
Fatman.
Horses.
You got to write it.
That is yoga.
It is Yoga Horses to me. I have to write it right over the camera. That is Fatman Beyond for this week, man. I'm Kevin Smith.
I am Marc Bernard.
Tune in next week. Same fat time, same fat channel, smodcast.com or
YouTube.com/Kevin Smith.
Excelsior, motherfuckers. Good night.
Peace out.